So there are a number of things that I need to do today. And I could start by working on the thing that I know is the biggest mental thing for me, which is going to be studying. Studying is going to be the big task. It's the most important thing that I need to do today. But I've also got a ton of admin stuff I need to do. I need to do the payroll for my staff. I need to send out a bunch of invoices. I need to follow up on like 30 different emails. And I know that's all stuff that has to happen today. So right now I've got like an hour left, I'm pretty sure, before my consultation begins. So I could probably get all of that admin stuff done right now before my consultation, and there will be time done. And that's one approach of how to prioritize your tasks. And some people will do that. It depends, how I would feel that day. But right now I know in myself that the studying is something that I find is really, really important, and it's something that I might end up putting off because I've got 4 hours of consultations back to back. By the end of that, I may be so damn tired that I just cannot be bothered studying. And then even if I get my admin stuff done, I still feel like I lost that day because I didn't do the stuff that was important. So this is a really common thing, is to have a lot of things that you need to do in a certain day. However, by the end of the day, you may have been filling that time, but you still don't feel like you got anything meaningful that was done, anything that changed the situation or changed the status. And often studying and learning is one of those things. Like, for example, students often find it a mental barrier and put off by having to spend time to learn how to study properly. But not spending that time and learning how to study properly is actually detrimenting overall, because then you're just constantly trapped in the spiral of never having enough time, because you're never increasing your skills beyond the challenges of what you need on a day-to-day basis. And so for me, I always like to start with the things that I know, these are the things that I'm gonna end up either putting off, but they're the things that are gonna make a difference. I know that tomorrow it's not gonna be any easier to find time for me to study. I've got plenty of things I need to do tomorrow, and I know the day after is gonna be the same, and the future is unknown. I may have a total, like today was meant to be completely free, but it ends up being really packed full of things I need to do. So therefore, I'm gonna start by doing some study, and I know I'm not going to finish. However, the work left undone is also gonna further motivate me to finish it after my consultations are all finished, rather than the procrastination of having to start something, knowing that I'm kind of halfway through. Is going to further motivate me as well. So I'm going to start with the studying, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do it and how everything builds. And hopefully through these videos, you'll see a little bit more about how this whole system kind of builds on itself. So let's get into that. Now, because people always ask me, the app that I'm using for my mind maps and everything is called Concepts. It's available on Windows or iOS. It's the best note-taking app as far as I know, because of the fact that it has reasonably good organization, and it's also got infinite canvas, and there are not many note-taking apps that have true infinite canvas and also nice looking pen pressure sensitivity. And so that's why. And those of you that are going through the course, you'll realize why it's so important, and the vast majority of the students going through the course do end up using something like Concepts. So if you're interested in downloading it, I'll check a link down below in the description as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just chuck up all my tabs onto my other monitor over here, so I can use this just as a drawing tablet. And you can see that there's quite a lot of reading that I need to do, and I've now got 52 minutes to go. But I'll be building on the set of understanding that I had from my previous session, which is still mentally very, very strong. It's been a few days since I've done this. However, I'm feeling very, very comfortable with the topic, and when I look at the mind map, it's just straight away there. And you can see there's a lot of blanks and spaces in between the map, which allows me to have a lot of freedom when it comes to filling things in and moving things around and arranging things in space a little bit better. And it means that I've got a backbone that I can build stuff on. And so I can basically start from any one of these points and just expand on it, because I've got the fundamental flow of information there. I don't have to really worry about the organization so much. My previous videos, I'm really focusing on the organization aspect. With these ones, I already know how the information is gonna fit. So again, I've already got the organizational system, so this part should actually be surprisingly much faster. And so I don't know exactly how much I'll be able to get through. There is quite a significant amount of reading to do here. Now, one thing that I do, because I know that I'm not going to have to recall a lot of this detail from memory, because that's not the way that I'm really being assessed anymore. And actually, as you continue to go through the years, less and less of what you need is through just memorization of things, because you usually have it on reference on hand or something like that. So the way that I do it is I use an app called Roam Research, and I will annotate things, and I'll put it into Roam as I go, and it's a relational database type of an app. It's better for kind of relating multiple different concepts that come from different sources together. Really, really good for research or postgraduate stuff. And actually, if I knew about this, I would have used it all throughout med school as well. Well, it didn't actually even exist back then, but it's a really good app to use. I think at the moment it's probably the best at what it does in terms of creating like relational information. It's much better than Notion in that case. Notion is more for just general organization of ideas. So what I'm doing is I'm offloading a lot of that onto that. However, if I wasn't using that and I did need to have it off memory, for recall for like a test or exam, then I would spend this time to put those little things potentially onto flashcards or integrate them into my mind map in a way, or use some other kind of memorization technique of there are multiple different methods or systems available out there for use depending on the type of information I want to memorize and how I want to memorize it. And again, if you're wanting to know exactly that start to end process of how I go through studying and exactly what information I use in different ways and all the techniques associated with that in a step-by-step way, you can check the link below to have a look at the study skills course that I have. You can interact with me and learn my techniques and ask me questions as well. Anyway, back to it. A small point and a quick tip that I would like to point out, just FYI, here's where I am in terms of my mind map so far. So I've got here some words. It says social emotional climate, social emotional competencies, and then educational outcomes. And commonly what I'll see a lot of students doing, even when they're going through their mind maps and stuff, is they'll be writing those exact words down. And it's a very quick tip. What you can do is just reduce the words that are unnecessary, and it'll just simplify the picture a little bit. So you can see, for example, I've only written climate, competencies, and outcomes because it's a topic about social emotional learning. I'm not going to forget that it's a social emotional climate. I'm not going to somehow think that it's actually talking about the temperature. And outcomes, it's a topic about education. I know it's an educational outcome. So if it was an exception to that, then maybe I'd write that down like a mental health outcome, but I know it's not. So I don't need to write that down. It just reduces the words a little bit. It just simplifies the picture and it makes it easier to visualize the flow of ideas and how things are moving. And another quick example of how thinking about what you're writing down for a moment can really help to simplify and organize more complicated ideas easily. You can see in this graph that there are a bunch of different arrows here, and it can be a little bit hard to follow, and students would often actually just write this or draw this down exactly. But if you look at it really carefully, what you can notice is that actually all of these arrows lead to kind of the same thing. So it can actually be simplified like this. Right, so now we have a much clearer image of exactly what's going on, and it's just a little bit, the shape you can see is straight away, it looks a little bit simpler and a little bit easier to remember, and it's just not as confusing. So it's just like a tiny little things that just a little bit of thinking can really help to simplify. Now this applied across an entire subject, you can imagine that the actual total load that is reduced by, even though in this particular instance is just a little bit, it really starts to stack up. And a more simplified understanding in your mind means that as you're reading and learning more, it's easier to make those connections and organize information because you're just less burdened by miscellaneous, isolated facts floating around in there, frantically trying to organize them. If you organize as you go, it's a lot easier to encode it, it's a lot easier to retain it, you forget less of it, and therefore you need to rely less on things like spaced repetition in order to maintain that awareness. Now, you still will need things like spaced repetition, like I always say. It's a good adjunct to an existing system, but it's not going to be the thing that really separates you out unless you're doing absolutely no revision. But if you are, you may find that spaced repetition actually makes it overwhelming in terms of how much you need to study on a weekly or monthly basis. And this is the way that you break out of that spiral. You work on that higher efficiency encoding and all of the different techniques that I teach that are related to that. And it probably seems like no time has passed, but actually it's been 4 hours. I've had all of my consultations and things for the day, and it's all done. I'm feeling surprisingly not very tired, but I forgot to have lunch, so I'm just going to have some food right now and get back into it. But I thought I'd just show you where I'm at the moment in terms of the system that I'm using and what the situation is. I'm at a level where my knowledge of this topic is definitely getting down to those details, and it's much more in depth, and I feel like I really could seriously discuss some of these topics in a lot of detail. And remember, at this point in time, I've only actually studied this once a few days ago for like just over an hour, or actually just under an hour, and then once today for 50 minutes. So in total, there's only about 2 hours of studying that's being done. However, I have covered a very considerable amount of content, probably equivalent to a final year high school 3 or 4 weeks of school. Now, obviously, you know, this video is not really designed to be viewed in isolation. So if there are any techniques I'm using that you're not really 100% sure about, or you're just totally confused about, check out my other videos, or just leave a comment down below. Or if you want to get into it straight away and you just want to learn how to do all of this stuff for yourself, then again, check the link below and you can sign up for my course. So that's my study for the week for this paper. That's pretty much done now. And that obviously gives me a lot of mental freedom. And that mental freedom is the knowledge that I don't have to worry about, you know, studying more and reading more things. I can have the knowledge in my head and I can spend the rest of the week working with that knowledge, you know, doing assignments, things like that. So those of you that are still in school, you know, it's the idea would be like, okay, study the month in advance. And then for the rest of the month, all you're doing is practicing that knowledge, working with that knowledge, asking yourself challenging questions, things like that. Other revision techniques that I, you know, teach in the course or will go through in other YouTube videos. So that's the idea, is that in order to break away from the crowd, in order to be in a position where you're free from the rat race of the daily grind, you need to be doing something that's actually gonna free you from it. You can't do the same thing that got you into the grind and then expect that doing more of the thing that got you in the grind is gonna take you out of the grind. You have to do the thing that people that are in the grind are not doing. And at this current state of time, people in the grind are on the spaced repetition, active recall, flashcards, past papers grind. They are just relying on this endless retrieval and fighting uphill against this like wave of constant forgetting. But if you're just fundamentally changing the process by having a higher efficiency in coding, and then you're using the retrieval again as well. And by the way, if these are terms that are not that familiar to you, you're not really sure what I mean when I say encoding versus retrieval and all of that sort of stuff, then watch my other video about how memory works and how we can use that to our advantage. And then you'll realize how it doesn't make mathematical sense to be relying on something like flashcards for like the rest of your life, or to get, you know, top grades, when the vast majority of students that are using flashcards are not getting those grades that you want to be getting, unless the grade you want to be getting is just a pass, which is totally cool if that's your thing, but most of the people that are watching this, probably that's not where your goal lies. Thanks for paying attention, and I will catch you in the next one.